Kamala Harris, and I don't blame her, has not sat for an interview, has not conducted a press conference, while at the same time throwing overboard her stated positions from the 2019-2020 campaign on fracking, on Medicare for all, on mandatory gun buybacks, on ICE, which she said, we need to start from scratch in terms of how we handle illegal immigrants. And I think a press that was really interested in covering this would be demanding answers from her as to how and why did you come to the position that you no longer believe in those things? What happened here, as opposed to simply reporting that she's changed her position and allowing her to make statements through anonymous aides. And it really does matter. Because she is right now, she has no policy platform on her website. She's campaigning on vibes. So I think you've hit on something really important. I'll wait to circle back on Walz and his military service and so on. Given that I really do think at the end of the day, this race is going to be fought between Trump and Harris. But as you mentioned, the Walz thing is simply indicative of the way that the media is covering this race right now.
I mean, covering like a thinking about
Megyn,
somebody in the middle of Montana underneath their quilt who's got Raynaud's disease like I do, or your circulation doesn't work that well. That's how much they're covering. Go ahead, Eliana, what were you going to say?
We've seen the same story written in 3 different outlets, the AP, the Washington Post, and I forget the third one off the top of my head right now, that as Kamala Harris campaigns on joy and excitement, Trump offers dark themes. NBC News might be the third, but quite literally, we're seeing the same headlines multiply across the mainstream media, while there is no examination of the number of serious issues on which the Democratic presidential nominee now has flip-flopped, and a demand for answers about why.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, Emily. I mean, we know that the press is dishonest, that they're in the tank for Democrats, but on their favorite issues, whether it's defending Kamala, defending Joe for a while, defending Tim Walz now, defending the fake, sexual labels in terms of sex identification, all of it, their lies must be protected. People who report what is real must be destroyed. And their little cabal, I guess, just sits back and pats themselves on the back about how they get away with it. They change the national narrative, and they are hoping people like us will just be screaming into the wilderness, but it's not working. That's actually not working. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts, somebody like little Jill Burkham did not think that I would respond to her, but I will, Jill, because I'm not afraid of you. You don't control me. You don't control any entity for whom I work. I work for myself. And frankly, you can F off with all your journalistic pretenses, given your disgusting partisan hack record. Go ahead, Emily.
Well, yeah, and those are the people that are asking for the public's trust. They're the ones that have demonstrable records of double standards, and they're the ones that are demanding that the public trust them. And the public has obviously stopped buying it. Now, that said, one of the things that struck me about your amazing opening there is that these people, the gatekeepers, elite gatekeepers, they've never been less powerful. They are still powerful. There's a new survey out showing that words people are associating with J.D. Vance are now extreme, the word extreme, the word weird. And what's so creepy about that is you could run a narrative on Tim Walz or Kamala Harris about their policies on children and LGBT issues, the tampon policy. You could do that. The media could choose to focus on that just as much as they focused on an old J.D. Vance comment on the childless cat ladies. They could choose to do stuff like that about the very current policies of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and they could probably shift public opinion a little bit by doing it because there's something to work with there. But even when they don't really have something to work with, they're able to still manipulate public opinion to a certain extent. But what's freaking them out, and what's freaking people like your friend Jill out, Megyn, is that they're losing that power. They're losing that power because people like yourself are in these spaces and telling the truth. And that's really frightening for people in the elite media because they're not used to not being the gatekeepers. So it's amazing, astounding, the fact that they're giving, I think this is coverage like Obama got I think Kamala Harris, who is a much worse candidate than President Obama was in 2008, she's now getting the same level of coverage as he is. And everything else is just being totally tuned out. And their total ability to manipulate public opinion they don't have it right now like they used to, and they're lashing out.
It's very frustrating for them. They really are used to having a complete monopoly on the messaging. But for Fox, there'd be the annoying Fox News, but that was it. That's the only one they had to deal with. And now things have just completely changed. To your point, Eliana, Kamala Harris, she spent 71 seconds speaking to the press on Friday because JD Vance has been everywhere saying, where is she? And this is supposed to suffice for an interview, I guess, or some sort of a press conference. And honestly, the lapdog media says, okay, yeah, that did suffice. We got access to her. And what tough exchanges do they have ready? And don't tell me that they weren't ready for her to just pop back into the plane and ask her a question. If you are covering campaign, you have your best questions in your back pocket, ready to go in case something like this happens. So she pops back there, and what is she asked about? This critical matter. Listen.
There's been a lot of questions about when you're going to sit down for your first interview since being the nominee. Do you have any update on that?
I've talked to my team. I want us to get an interview scheduled before the end of the month.
So the question is, when are we going to ask more questions? When can we ask more questions? And the answer is a non-committal, like I hope to maybe schedule something before the end of the month. Maybe we'll schedule something.
Isn't that from the head of the White House Correspondents Association as well? I believe that was Eugene Daniels, who's currently the head of the White House Correspondents Association. So somebody who should really be at the top of the...
Isn't he the political guy, Eugene Daniels?
Yep.
Yeah, he's the hack who was calling Brian Kilmeade a racist for saying college, and she said colored, and he ran with it. I don't know if that's the one who asked that question, but that's what that Eugene guy from Politico did, and he ought to be ashamed of himself. Go ahead, Eliana, because that's not going to cut it. It shouldn't cut it. But the reason the press is not melting down saying this is effed up. There was a day in which the White House press corps would start boycotting. They would throw an absolute fit if they had no access to a campaign like this. When we're, weeks away from voting starting, she's not given one interview, even on the switcheroo. Her in for Biden, never mind her policy. There's nothing on her website. Maybe this week, they said, we'll get some policies. This is madness.
Yeah, and I don't want to underplay the significance of the coverage, even though the grip of the mainstream media has been loosening since, bloggers appeared on the scene in the early 2000s. It really, really matters. And again, I don't blame Kamala Harris. I blame the press for continuing to write positive stories, despite her refusal to answer serious questions. But she's not even being serious questions aren't even being put to her. And it is significant. It is significant because part of the vibes that she's riding is the positive media coverage that we're seeing every day, which is she's running a joyful campaign while Trump is offering themes of darkness. And, we can talk about Trump later. I don't think things are going so great there. However, in the real world, in the real fact-based world, media coverage would be about her tightly controlled campaign and the reasons for it, including that every time she spoke extemporaneously in 2019, things went quite poorly. It was in a CNN town hall, unscripted, not on a teleprompter, when she said she was all in favor of banning fracking in 2019. And it was off the cuff when she said she wanted to abolish Medicare for all. All of these statements that she has been forced to repudiate this time around in 2024 were things she said in off the cuff.
She wants to abolish private health insurance.
Yeah, abolish private health insurance. And that is why she's not out on the trail, but we really have not seen a piece of hard-hitting news coverage explaining to people why she is not sitting for interviews. She's not very good at that.
Some Americans enjoy using their credit cards because it can be a hassle-free and secure way to pay. But our sponsor, the American Payments Coalition, says that some DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. They say the bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed. allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. They say corporate megastores will make more money and you will wind up paying the price. Find out more info at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card while you're there, too. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.